Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language of U.S. Air Force veteran and UFO whistleblower Jake Barber during his NewsNation interview. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. Something I've said in other videos, but I think is important that I make clear here, is that I am inherently a skeptic. It takes a lot of evidence for me to believe something. That doesn't mean I can't believe in the extraordinary. It doesn't mean I can't believe in things that I didn't believe before, but it does mean that I need a lot of evidence, and I need what I call converging lines of evidence. I need multiple lines of evidence that prove that something's true. So even though I'm a skeptic, that doesn't mean I'm not open to different things. I'm not going to try to find ways to explain away things that I don't already believe. Now, I also want you to keep in mind how much I dislike people who manipulate and lie. That if I see somebody with even a chance of manipulating or lying, I'm going to point it out in great detail because I want to make sure you understand exactly how people manipulate and deceive. If that's something that I see in this video, I will point it out in great detail, and it is my goal to expose manipulative people if I think they're trying to manipulate. All right, enough with all that. Let's just jump right in.
In the rare occasion, or let's say the hypothetical occasion, something of a non-human origin or source were to interface with the ground, you would deploy that same team.
Now, one thing I'm noticing right here, he's talking with his hand as he's talking about this. And this is actually the first time he's talked about anything of non-human origin. Previous to this, there were just a couple of minutes before this where he wasn't talking about anything of this kind of substance, but he was sitting very still. Right now, he's moving a lot more. He's more emphatic. And we tend to associate that with people that mean something, that are telling the truth. Because the more you emphasize, the bigger you are, the more you're going to be noticed. And when we start deceiving, if we're lying, we want to be noticed less. We don't want people to pay quite as much attention to our body language. So this actually is a sign that he really means and feels what he's saying right now.
Source were to interface with the ground, you would deploy that same team. And that is the segue in how we got involved with this particular subject.
So tell me about the moment when you realized that you were involved in a retrieval of non-human technology, alien.
So as they're starting to talk about this, I know I'm interrupting a lot because the way that this is set up, that's just the nature of it. We'll watch longer parts as we keep going. But one thing you're noticing right now, as he's talking about alien technology, you're seeing Jake Barber nod his head. Now, those subtle movements can mean a lot. It means that he really is agreeing with what's being said to him. It's something that we're not noticing, because usually when people start doing something like this, you'll notice a little bit of a smile or a smirk, because there's something called duper's delight. It's the idea that when you're manipulating or when you've got a big lie and somebody's starting to talk about it, there's excitement that comes with that. So there's this excitement that you're going to get one over on somebody. We're not seeing anything like that from Jake Barber at this point, and if it does happen later, I'll point it out.
You could tell that it was extraordinary and anomalous. It was not human. Looking at the object on the ground, you could tell that it was extraordinary and anomalous. It was not human.
So this was interesting. Watch this right here. I want you to pay attention to his eyebrows.
That it was extraordinary and anomalous. It was not human.
Okay, so you heard him say it was anomalous. It was not human. Now, he tends to keep his eyebrows up anyway, which brings attention to our face. We do that when we really want people to pay attention to what we're saying, but also it can mean surprise. And when he talked about it being anomalous and not human, you saw his eyebrows go up more, which I associate more with surprise with the way that he was doing that. So I think that as he's talking about this, he's tapping back into real emotions, and the real emotion was surprise.
How close did you get?
Well, I was a helicopter pilot, and I operate with 150 foot to 200 foot long line. So I got within 150 feet of this object.
What did you see?
I saw an egg, a white egg.
Was there any visible propulsion system on it?
No, not what we would know. There's no engine. There was no thermal signature.
You notice the subtle head movements he's making as he's talking about this. These appear involuntary. Now, people can perform and do similar things, but there's a certain quality to the way that he's doing it, a subtleness to the way that he's doing it that does seem to be that he's actually tapping into real memories. So this continues to be body language that is consistent with someone who is actually re-experiencing and thinking about the things that he's talking about.
Not what we would know. There's no engine. There was no thermal signature. I was operating at night when I finally came in to pick it up, so I'm working under night vision goggles at the time. And it was quite clear. I flipped them up, flipped them down, and looked at it a couple of different ways.
So you could see that as he was talking about it, the way that he leaned in, the way that he was appearing to remember what he was doing, the way that he mimicked it, it's much harder to do that with fake memories or things that aren't real. It all appeared to be very authentic. In addition, that makes us much more visible. The more we mime things, the more we play them out when in a way that's not performative, the more likely we are to be seen. So if we're making up a story, if we're lying, if we're being deceptive, we tend to do less of that because we do associate people that use their hands more when they talk with people that are being more honest. So the idea that he's mimicking these things also makes him more visible, less likely capable of hiding, which we oftentimes want to do when we're lying, which continues to lend credence to the idea that he believes exactly what he's saying.
How large was the object?
I would say approximately 20 feet, plus or minus a little bit, about the size of a large SUV.
Did it have any...
See, once again, reached out to Ross as he's saying that, about the size of an SUV. He wants to connect with the interviewer. He is trying to say, look, you should believe what I'm saying. I'm willing to connect and be open with you.
Seams?
No.
And it was pure white?
It was like pearly white, like a metallic.
Watch his face right here.
Pure white.
It was like pearly.
So there was a look of confusion on his face for a second. As he's trying to figure out how to describe it, there looked to be genuine confusion through his brow and through his face.
White, like a metallic pearly white, the best I could assess.
How did you know that that egg-shaped object was non-human in origin?
Well, visually, after seeing all kinds of things in my past, it was clearly something that was ridiculously looking. It's inconsistent with anything I'd ever...
Now, you'll notice he said that it was ridiculously looking, which obviously is grammatically incorrect, and that's actually an important part of this. When we are getting into something that is intensely emotional, something we feel strongly about, things like grammar, logic, all of those can break down a little bit. It can be harder to access that because the emotion is so strong. So the fact that he's making those kinds of mistakes, the fact that he didn't say that very cleanly, continues to lend more credence to the idea that this isn't an act. It's not a performance. Because when people are performing, they tend to be on point. They've practiced it. There's a performative aspect to it. And we haven't seen anything like that from Jake Barber so far.
Visually, after seeing all kinds of things in my past, it was clearly something that was ridiculously looking. It's inconsistent with anything I'd ever seen before. I can also tell you that the reaction by my team, we all knew we were dealing with something.
Now, this is another important point. I want you to see that Ross was getting ready to say something, but he continued to talk. I'll show why that's important in a second.
Thing I'd ever seen before. I can also tell you that the reaction by my team,
So something that lends credence to the idea that he's somebody that is honest is that he's not trying to charm Ross in any way. Because when we see that, that can become a little bit more concerning. That makes somebody's interview a little bit more questionable.
And at no stage were you ever subsequently told that the craft was of non-human origin?
I will tell you that during this process over the last couple of years, it's been confirmed to me by ranking members of the UAP task force that what we were working with that night was in fact NHI, and it was not a unique experience.
What?
Hearing him talk reminds me of watching an expert on the stand when you watch a trial. I watch lots of trials. I've been in trials. When you hear him say this, he's very clear. He's very direct. He does not hedge his bets. He's not giving half answers. He is answering directly and clearly, which is something that's hard to get people to do at any time. So the fact that he's doing it like this makes him sound like he's not only telling the truth, but he's a professional about it. He's actually trying to handle it in as direct a way as humanly possible.
So there was another object. There's two objects that I'm here to talk about.
This is interesting. Watch his face right here. There was another object. Closes his mouth, swallows, raises his eyebrows more. Talking about this is making him feel uncomfortable. Now, that can sometimes happen when people are being deceptive, but there are other markers we would look for as he continues to talk. If they're there, I will let you know. But this can mean one of two things. One, that either that he's going to say something that is deceptive, or two, that he's tapping into a memory that makes him feel uncomfortable. It will look different in a minute if it's deception.
There's two objects that I'm here to talk about. One was the egg. The other is what we called an eightgon. The eightgon was essentially a flying disc with what looked like 8 delineated sections when looking down. And I can tell you what it looked like from looking down because that's primarily how I saw it.
So what I think this is he seems to be much more uncomfortable talking about the eightgon than the egg. The egg didn't seem to bring him too much distress. For whatever reason, this one seems to bother him more. But as I've talked about previously, the way that he's moving, the way that he's connecting with memories, the way that he's moving his hands, the way that he is making himself seen. So I don't believe that him pursing his lips and swallowing before was preparation for deception. I think there was actually discomfort with what he's going to talk about because his body language now seems to be very, very honest.
Because I'm a helicopter pilot. We did recoveries with the eightgons. There was more than one that made its way to the ground on this particular operation.
You'll also notice that his head is down more, his chin is down more, and that's a more defensive posture. So there is discomfort with this, because if you leave your neck open, you're very vulnerable. And as you can see, his head is positioned down further. Something about this eightgon, I think, makes him feel uncomfortable, or something about the situation related to it.
This is one of the most profound experiences I've ever had in my life I'm about to share with you, so bear with me.
Okay, so now maybe we're seeing why there was so much feeling before. And this continues to suggest that this is something that's very real and legitimate. What kind of makes me laugh as I'm talking about this, because I keep talking about the fact he's showing signs of honesty, is if you watch the videos I do on criminals, serial killers, all the true crime stuff, I constantly have people commenting, would you just show us somebody who's telling the truth for once? Because I cover so many people that just lie, and I show you how they deceive. So it's pretty rare, actually, that I cover people that I think are telling the truth, which is funny to me because so far there's been no overt signs of deception. And the last video I did on UFOs, when I talked about Bob Lazar, I also didn't see any signs of deception there. So it kind of makes me laugh, because generally, if you watch my other videos, all I talk about is what a bunch of liars people are. But so far, so good.
And the closer I get, the more the emotion starts to overwhelm me. I feel this intense hybrid of sadness and happiness and beauty, and song, and it was very disruptive.
You're noticing his eyebrows are raising when he says these things. Watch this.
Hybrid of sadness and happiness and beauty, and song.
So with happiness and sadness, he didn't raise his eyebrows, but beauty and song, he did. There's something about those parts of the experience that really surprised him. You're seeing a bit of shock about that.
And it was very disruptive to me, because I had a very practical responsibility at the time to operate a helicopter in the mountains at night. And I began wondering what was wrong with me. It was late. I'm like, am I just stressed? Am I tired? And I don't know. But as I came over this object for the pick, there was this overwhelming sense of emotion.
Is it your feeling? Are you suddenly having a mental breakdown on the job?
No, I felt like something connected with me. I felt like something had tuned in to me and my soul and was providing me some sense of guidance on what to do and how profound what I was doing was. And it was so overwhelming that...
So as he was talking about that, after he said that sentence, you saw him lick his lips. That does suggest there's stress and anxiety associated with this.
Found what I was doing was. And it was so overwhelming that I began to cry.
After he said I began to cry, watch his mouth right here. They cut off, but just watch this for a second.
And it was so overwhelming that I began to cry.
I know this is in the middle of a transition, but you can see his mouth there like that. We do that when we disapprove of something. So I think the idea of saying that he began to cry, he disapproves of that idea. Probably thinking back that he was flying a helicopter and was crying, that probably distresses him. It probably is something that he disapproves of, because he doesn't like the idea of that happening. That probably made him feel out of control. But that does show a real emotion of disapproving of what he felt at the time, that he didn't particularly seem to want that right then.
My particular cues when doing this type of work, and I got the load hooked up and I began flying away. And once it was just me and that object in between the pick and the drop site, there's about 20 miles in between, I felt like something was inside of me. I felt like I was possessed by the most beautiful spirit I'd ever been possessed by. And
was it loving?
So if you want to know whether or not that was legitimate emotion coming out, let's watch this right here.
Spirit I'd ever been possessed by. And
was it?
So part of the reason that I think that that's real emotion, part of the reason I think that he actually feels moved as he's talking about this, is I've seen a lot of people fake emotion. It does not take many trials or much true crime to see people faking things, and verifiably so. People are terrible at fake crying. It is really, really hard to fake emotion like this because people overshoot. They'll pull out a tissue, they'll dab their eyes, they'll look at it. Oftentimes it's dry because they can't actually get any tears out. There tends to be a little bit more performance with it when it comes to somebody trying to demonstrate emotion or them trying to cover their face. There's a lot of things that people do because they feel uncomfortable knowing if I get caught with this, people are going to see that I'm faking emotion. This was pretty subtle. We're not seeing this big display of emotion. You can hear the way that he's breathing afterward. It sounds like somebody who is actually trying to stifle emotion.
Was it loving?
It was loving. But there was a sense of sadness at the same time. And
so as you can see, his brow came together right there. Right now, there's a look of confusion, of genuine confusion as he's talking about this. What we're not seeing is he's not, once again, overdoing it. He's not showing all of these big displays of emotion. He looks genuinely confused about the sadness he felt.
but there was a sense of sadness at the same time. And
Had you ever had an experience like this before?
No, it was a very feminine energy, I'll tell you that. In the program, there was certainly a desire to explore the idea that perhaps UAP could be summoned, could be communicated with, could be controlled, and could be persuaded to land, all by deploying people with psionic abilities.
And did you see that happen?
Yes, I did.
When a psionic...
So whether or not he's telling the truth right here or he believes what he's saying is true, let's watch this right here.
And could be persuaded to land, all by deploying people with psionic abilities.
And did you see that happen?
Yes, I did.
So I talk about head shakes and head nods on lots of videos. It's very subtle right here, but I want you to watch his head.
With psionic abilities.
And did you see that happen?
Yes, I did.
So yes, I did. It's very subtle, but it's also very important because what he's doing is synchronous. He's nodding his head as he's saying yes, which means he really does feel it and believe it. Oftentimes when people are intentionally being deceptive, they'll say yes, and then they'll shake their head afterward because they have to remind themselves, I got to show the body language for that. People don't do it literally in those words, but oftentimes that's what happens. What we're seeing right here is someone who believes what he is saying.
When a psionic operator engages with technology, how do they do it?
Using their mind, something like meditation.
There genuinely are people who can actually make a mental, spiritual connection to a technology.
Yes, 100%.
They're the eyebrows again. Watch this.
Connection to a technology.
Yes.
So, yes. Once again, that shows surprise. It could also show emphasis, but to me, it looks more like surprise. So as he probably discovered this, he probably felt surprise. There can be shockwaves of that when we talk about it again. So when he's confirming this, he's raising his eyebrows. There's some surprise even for himself. So we'll go ahead and stop here. Hopefully this is helping you better understand some of the behavior and body language that we saw today. Shockingly for me, once again, we are watching somebody who is showing no overt signs of deception. And it's not just that I say everybody tells the truth. If all you've watched is my videos where I'm talking about the UFO whistleblowers and UAPs and things like that, it's very, very different than if you watch me covering a lot of the folks that are on trial or people that are providing testimony or criminals in interrogations. I've done so many of those. I've done hundreds of those, and 99% of them are lying. And that's basically what I'm pointing out on every video is look at how much this person is not telling the truth. It's very interesting to me to watch a video where someone shows no overt signs of deception. Once again, he absolutely believes everything that he is saying. So whether or not you believe what he's saying or you think that he believes something incorrectly, that's neither here nor there. That I can't speak to. I can't independently verify whether or not what he's saying is in fact true, but I can tell you that he definitely believes it. If you have any other thoughts or you want me to analyze anything, please let me know in the comments below. I plan on doing more and maybe a series on UFO whistleblowers. There's so many interesting videos out there, and I have seen some where I feel very convinced that people are lying. So I can cover those if you want to see those too. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.